What is up, boxing fans around the world? A lot of us still buzzing from last night. Benavidez Plant, what's up, FightHype family? What's going on, everybody in the chat room? Had a great time calling the fight last night at the MGM Grand. Had a great time all weekend, or all week, covering that fight for you guys, getting the interviews and the reactions after the fight, and everything was great. So, I actually lied. There aren't three things to take away from this fight. There are many more than just three things. But, you know, like De La Soul said, rest in peace to Dave, three is the magic number sometimes. So three had a good ring to it. But really, we got a dozen or so things to go over today, as David Benavidez had a rally from losing about the first 4 or 5 rounds, depending how you scored it. Round 3 maybe could have went his way, but other than round 3, he was swept in most people's eyes the first 5 rounds until he came on extremely strong and battered Caleb Plant from round 6 to 12 for about 7 rounds straight to go ahead and win a hard-earned unanimous decision in a fight with a lot of drama involved. And you know, Caleb Plant, I think if he was up against any other man but David Benavidez, he may have succumbed to as many punches as he was taking, but his pride, with so much personal animosity and respect on the line, he wouldn't allow himself to hit that mat, and you know, Kenny Bayless allowed for a lot of holding, but Plant boxed a masterpiece for about 5 rounds until Benavidez turned it on in the 6th, and Plant began to fade, and then Benavidez took over. But this was a fight, in my eyes, that kind of exceeded expectations. I think a lot of us felt Plant would have success early, but that Benavidez would take over and stop him. And Plant had, you know, not just good little success early, but real success. I thought he would only have success for about 3 rounds, and not at the level that he had it at. And he had it for 5 rounds until Benavidez got to him and made some adjustments. And Benavidez put on a clinic. If you ever want to look up how to punch out of the clinch, you know, you'll hear referees and old school trainers say, punch out of the clinch, fight out of the clinch, fight out of the clinch. David Benavidez did that beautifully. And some people talked about how he used his elbows and whatnot. Well, you know, if you can get away with it, like Bernard Hopkins and Andre Ward, who are a lot slicker in being dirty in the inside. You know, Floyd Mayweather, though, too, sometimes will put that forearm on you and then bang, hit you with the right hand. But Benavidez wouldn't take no for an answer in those clinches. He said, Bayless, if you're not going to get him off of me, I'll get him off of me myself with my elbows, and then you know. So it was tremendous fighting out of the clinch by Benavidez. Didn't use his jab nearly enough, and the fight almost got away from him because of that. But still, one good adjustment he made was actually counterpunching Plant, countering Plant jumping in with shots in the second half of the fight. So we got a lot of takeaways to take away today, but to begin with a couple, if you didn't believe this already, Benavidez is the best fight for Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds. I respect that Canelo wants to get some redemption against Bivol at 175 in September. That's fine. But when he really returns to the 68 weight class, the fight is Benavidez and Canelo. Number 2, the ring IQ and adjustments made in the ring by Benavidez. Ring IQ was lacking early on, made the fight very hard for himself by reaching for power shots, reaching for right hands to the body, reaching for right hands up top, and not starting the fight with his jab. And Plant started the fight beautifully with his jab. But Benavidez, his first time really, really under the bright lights, headlining in a pay-per-view type fight. And halfway through, he began to grow and adjust, in addition to Plant fading, which helped a lot. But he began to counter Plant jumping in. And would actually hold his ground and would let Plant jump in with a lead left hook or trying to start something off with the left hand and shoot off a combination. And he began to counter the counter puncher. And then the other adjustment he made was, you know, fighting out of the clinch. And that brings me to the third point for David, which is he hasn't peaked at all. There's still room to grow. A lot of the flaws his detractors talked about, they showed up last night and they were exploited by Plant in the first half of the fight. The squaring up at the feet, not really cutting the ring off, and sometimes standing straight up. Plant was stabbing to the body beautifully, like Andre Ward, like Floyd Mayweather. But David, again, maybe part of why he's reaching for power shots and not starting with the jab is that anger he was fighting with, and his lack of ever fighting someone with this level of boxing IQ like Caleb Plant. So I think you're going to see a better David Benavidez next time out. He's still just 26 years old, And at 30 years old, I felt Caleb Plant looked better in this fight than he did against Canelo. And part of that was, the opponent, not being able to pin him along the ropes as consistently as Canelo was, who was cutting the ring off better than David and getting underneath better than David. But Plant still, to me, fought a better fight, looked better and more comfortable and confident on the stage, even at 30 years old versus 26. So Plant still got a little bit better. If Plant can get a little bit better at 30, Benavidez could certainly get better at 26. I think next time he will make use of his jab more. And also, few guys have the foot speed and the coordination with circling the ring like Caleb Plant. When styles make fights, and Canelo Alvarez is going to be a lot more stationary in front of Benavidez, and that can let him get his jab going a little bit better, because the jab was shut down against Plant, and Plant's jab was beautiful early on. I feel like David could have made the fight easier on himself had he used his jab more to start the fight, but it's a lot easier where I'm sitting from. And then another point, nasty by any means necessary to win. The guy, with the elbows and the forearms to the face, was doing anything necessary to win, and Plant was doing anything necessary to make it to the finish line, because his pride wouldn't allow his back to touch the canvas against this man with this much personal stuff on the line. And let me get to a couple super chats here. Matt's Adventures said, Kenny Bayless got a fat check for this fight. David Benavidez beat the ref and Plant. If David can beat the scale a few more times, I don't see him getting beat soon. Thank you, Matt's Adventures, for the super chat. And Bayless was awful last night. Awful, just awful. He would only warn Benavidez. Plant should have had a point or two deducted for clinching. I respect Breadman Edwards so much, and he coached so great, but I believe after the fight he said if you were only looking at the clinching from Bayless being an error, then you just wanted Plant to get stopped, because David did use his elbows and began to punch at the back of the head, but part of why he was doing that was the excessive clinching. And if Plant isn't allowed to clinch so excessively, and at times in the clinches, Plant with one arm hanging on for dear life to one arm while David's hitting him with the other free arm, Plant at times dipping his head down, and that's why those shots are coming to the back of the head. So but Plant fought a tremendous first half of the fight and showed tremendous grit in that fight. He definitely got to walk out with his head held high. Prada Pierre, I'm gonna get right to you, brother. Thank you for the super chat. But Canelo had the superior performance against Plant. He didn't get touched up nearly as much. His defense was much better than David's. He cut the ring off and got him on the ropes more consistently. But that being said, and he got the knockout, and David was not able to. But that being said, David inflicted more punishment on Caleb Plant than Canelo Alvarez did. He took more of a pound of flesh out of Caleb Plant than Canelo Alvarez did. Those are the kind of fights, down the stretch what Benavidez did to Plant that change a fighter, that take years off their prime. That remains to be seen with Caleb Plant. So I do want to say Canelo had the superior performance to Benavidez. But Canelo, when he fought Plant, is in his peak. Benavidez isn't in his peak yet. He's not a finished product. And Benavidez, despite not getting the knockout and not having as stellar a performance as Canelo, did inflict more damage upon Caleb Plant in their fight. So, yeah, it was... let me see here. Got a couple super chats to get to. My man Prada Pierre saying Benavidez can be outboxed and Boo Boo should want next. Prada Pierre, Boo Boo ain't beating David Benavidez. Boo Boo fades like Plant does in the second half of fights. And Boo Boo is coming up from 154 pounds, and Plant was a natural 168 pounder who actually, as an amateur, was a light heavyweight at 175. And Plant is in his prime, and although Boo Boo's never been stopped like he was, and that can affect you, but Plant is younger than Boo Boo. Boo Boo's well into his 30s. He was a 154 pounder, and his legs aren't what they once were. His feet and his legs aren't as fresh as Caleb Plant's are right now. I think Benavidez would stop Andrade. I don't think Andrade's legs would hold up for 12 rounds, and then once he's more of a stationary target to Benavidez, once anybody outside of Canelo or Better Biev or Bivol is a stationary target with David, that's a problem. I mean, maybe David Morrell, who's still green, David Morrell's the only guy who's got the size Benavidez has at 68, but he's still in the prospect to contender stage, But I don't think Boo Boo Andrade beats Benavidez. I don't think Charlo, with all his layoffs and having to come up to 68. Charlo, when he's right, like against J-Rock and Derevianchenko, if he could carry that package up to 68, that would be a hell of a fight. I would still favor David, but it would be a hell of a fight. But Charlo, the way he is now, and I was happy to speak to him after the fight, but he wouldn't win that fight against Benavidez. He needs a fight or two. He needs to get back in the ring and get a fight or two at 68 before he get in there with Benavidez. Rondo said Canelo counterpunching will be the difference in my opinion. Yeah, and officially, if David had fought, the Canelo that fought Caleb Plant would have beaten the David that fought Caleb Plant. From what I could see ringside, he would have. Canelo would have been a problem for David, especially getting underneath to the body. Plant touched Benavidez' body a lot in the first 5 rounds. But the problem with that assessment is Canelo the same fighter he was in 2021 when he fought Plant? Because in 2022, Canelo took a little bit of a step back performance-wise against Golovkin too, even when he got the win. And Benavidez at 26, having popped his cherry on this stage, is going to be better. Is going to be, his IQ is going to go up from this fight, and he's going to know how to use his tools better. So Benavidez is going to be Benavidez is better, I believe. He'll be better than he was last night, because that's, at this age, you get better from big fights like that. And Canelo, I don't know if he's still peaking like he was in late 2020, throughout 2021 when he grabbed all 4 of those belts. Canelo still deserves to be the favorite right now, but that's a great fight. That's a 50-50 type fight. That could be Morales-Barrera at 168 pounds, something. Well, I mean, those guys ain't going to throw as many punches as the featherweights, Barrera and Morales, but Benavidez being Morales, the temper-filled guy, the guy that you can get under his skin and get him angry, who's tall and throws a bunch of punches, against Barrera being Canelo, the more economical guy who's going to look to kill with that left hook to the body and pick his shots, the shorter guy. And, I mean, Canelo and Benavidez is one of the best fights, maybe the best action fight that could be made in the sport. And I've been saying that for over 2 years, but now Benavidez is actually prepared for the fight, having fought a real top opponent in Plant, and he's going to be even more ready by the time him and Canelo would ever fight, because Canelo being tied up with Bivol at 75, that gives time for Benavidez to face a boo-boo and to continue to hone in and get better at 26, 27, 28 is when, 29 is when you start to hit that peak. And so this is just the beginning of Benavidez' prime. So he'll only get better. And I think that's a 50-50 type fight. I think if they fought tomorrow, you got to give the edge to Canelo Alvarez. His better defense than David, although David in the second half was able to catch and shoot beautifully off the counters. But yeah, I got to favor Alvarez getting underneath, his great defense, getting underneath, the jab and whatever Benavidez has got going, and then cooking him on the inside to the body where Benavidez is vulnerable. But but when Canelo fades and fights, because he fades too, it's just he's so strong and he's got a much better poker face than someone like Plant, and he can make you miss while staying stationary, so he doesn't have to waste more energy using his legs. When he's tired, like we saw against Bivol, he'll just lay on the ropes sometimes and make you miss with the upper body movement still. But if he starts to fade like that against David, like he did against Bivol, it's going to be a problem, because Benavidez thrives when he smells that fatigue coming in. That's when he turns it up. So that I could see that just being a great fight where Canelo is piecing David up, hurting him, maybe drops him in the first half, but then Benavidez comes on strong in the second half, and we get a great dramatic fight. Benavidez has to handle business. I think I'm optimistic that PBC is going to get him strong opponents now after this pay-per-view caliber fight, that he won't have to go back to fighting a David Lemieux or guys like that. So I'm hopeful that Benavidez continue to sharpen up and get good in 2023 against good opponents, while Canelo, redeems himself or falls short again against Bivol, and then we can see them mix it up for all 4 belts in 2024, Cinco de Mayo, Mexican Independence Day. I don't know. Let them have their pick. But, yeah, man, it was just it's an awesome night of boxing all around. How did David have more stamina than Caleb? Asked Gassip Vlog. Boxing isn't about bodybuilding. Brandon Rios, Marcos Maidana, these were guys that could throw 100 punches and come forward all night, and they never had a six-pack. So, we'd have to bring in, Coach Wade to explain how the different, way people are blessed with cardiovascular systems. But David's got some lungs. He may not be the shredded guy, but he's in great shape. You know, Muhammad Ali never had a ripped six-pack, but he could throw 72 punches in the 14th round in a heavyweight fight against Joe Frazier. So, sometimes part of it is being relaxed, but Caleb didn't look tight to me. He looked more relaxed this time. He didn't look as tight as he did on the Canelo stage, but you know, still faded there. But you know, it was obvious that Caleb took a lot from Andre Ward coming in and helping him out with Virgil Hunter. That the way he would extend that lead hand and leave it out there, Ward would do that. The stab to the body was very Ward and Mayweather-esque, and Plant fought a beautiful fight for 5 rounds. He really did. Again, I still feel like if Benavidez would have used his own jab earlier on, he wouldn't have made it as hard on himself. But a lot of that was just Caleb Plant was really good early in that fight. So we shall see. And I'll be going to San Diego to go holler at Canelo Wednesday in San Diego. That should be fun. That should be a fun interaction. Get his thoughts on the fight, and see what's going on next. Prada Pierre saying, I want Bivol versus Beterbiev first before Saul too. I know. You know, in a perfect world, you know, Bivol, Beterbiev, and Canelo Benavidez, you know, 2 great undisputed fights. But, you know, Bivol didn't want to, Canelo, for whatever reason, didn't want to take the PBC deal. Eddie Hearn, very good at wooing him and, you know, satisfying his ego, making sure he feels like he's the biggest superstar in the world. And Eddie, very good relationship with Canelo Alvarez, got him to take, you know, I think the less sexy fights in Bivol and Golovkin, at least in America, because in America, fighting the Americans, Charlo and Benavidez, would have been a lot hotter, sexier, juicier fights with bigger pay-per-view numbers. But Canelo opted to do the Eddie Hearn thing, and then he hit a roadblock by actually losing the fight to Bivol. So now he has to run it back and do a whole other year. And you know, but Canelo's got, and then you know, ESPN and Beterbiev have their own plans. They got the Callum Smith lined up. You know, for these networks to come together when it's 2 different promoters, there's got to be a lot of money in the pot. That's just the reality of the situation. And I don't know if there's that so much money in the pot for Beterbiev and Bivol to make Top Rank and Matchroom just itch to work and make that fight together. So, you know, we're going to get Canelo Bivol too. And one of my main questions when I see Canelo Wednesday about the Bivol rematch is the first Golovkin fight that most people felt he lost. I thought a draw was reasonable, but he threw about 500 punches, right, in the first Golovkin fight. The second Golovkin fight, where it was obvious Canelo poured his heart and soul into camp and into that fight in 2018, he went from 500 punches to 622 punches. He threw 120 more punches than he did the first time and never took a step back. And 120 punches over 12 rounds meant he was throwing 10 more punches per round than from the first fight. My main question to Canelo about Bivol is, can he summon that again like he did with Golovkin? Can he put it all on the line so hard in camp? Whatever he did in that second camp for Golovkin, can you summon that again and win or lose, have your gas tank ready to be emptied? Because he really emptied the tank in that second Golovkin fight. He didn't pace himself and fight too economical like he usually does. He had his foot on the pedal for all 12 rounds and was exhausted after that fight. And I want to know, can he do that again? Can he find a way to generate 100 more punches thrown over the course of the fight like he did in the Golovkin rematch? We'll have to see. Man, we got almost 700 people in here. The boxing world is buzzing after that fight. And again, I think that fight was a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. I think it exceeded expectations a little bit. And then afterwards, both guys, showed all respect to each other. And, you know, some people try to say, oh, that's corny. So all along, you guys were just talking to hype the fight. And no, I think that's a beautiful thing, especially as an example to young men and to young people that, after you duke it out, you shake hands like men and respect one another and respect each other's families, and you don't speak badly about each other and continue to disrespect each other. I thought that was great from Benavidez and Plant. And I do think that did happen because David won. I do think Caleb's temperament, if he would have won, I like Caleb, and again, fought a great fight through 5 rounds and showed a heart bigger than the state of Tennessee. where he comes from. And but if Caleb would have won, there would have been a lot of y'all didn't think I'd win. Okay, then. He would have looked at David and said, thought you was going to break my jaw. Okay, then. So, I'm happy that that Benavidez did the right thing in victory. I wasn't sure he was going to, but I did feel like if either guy was going to really bury the hatchet in victory, it would have been Benavidez, and he did. And I say that not to take away from Plant, who was a class act as well, but I say that because Benavidez got pegged as the bad guy for how he behaved at the press conference in LA before the fight, for the way his father talked. And what you guys saw after the fight is the David I've been seeing since I've been covering him for over a half decade. At his core, when it's not fight time and he doesn't become that demon, that Mexican monster, a tender kid, a tender fat kid who was a nice tender kid when he was young. And that's what you saw with him and Plant after the fight. He let that tenderness, that humanity come through and showed you, that David Benavidez isn't a bad guy. So that was good. You guys like the impersonation. Thank you. Yeah, I got a good Caleb Plant. I've been interviewing him I even got a good David. No, I just want to thank Caleb Plant. He's a great fighter. I said I sent him to the fucking hospital, bro, but we're friends now, so yeah, that's my Benavidez, but Ray Diaz says Benavidez does hit hard. Yeah, he does hit hard. The power is real. The power is real. Him and Canelo bombs away. They both got great punching power. It'd be interesting to see what kind of puncher Benavidez would be at 75. Would he be a lesser puncher fighting bigger men, or would him being allowed to rehydrate and be a lot more comfortable at 175 pounds, would that make him a dangerous puncher at 175 pounds? I'm very interested. I understand all the money and all that is at 168, but I really think David's a light heavyweight squeezing down to 168 and is young enough to still be getting away with it, but he's skating on thin ice as soon as it continues. There's only so much longer he's going to get away with sucking down to 68. I'm curious. I think there's a chance that Benavidez is even better at 75 once he moves up, like Canelo was when he went from 54 to 60, not as drained. Or maybe he's the weight bully, and him not having that physical size advantage will get him a little exposed in that area. It remains to be seen. I'm looking forward to when he moves up to 75. And in general, I like covering David Benavidez. I thought he'd win by knockout. He didn't do that. He didn't perform quite as well as I predicted. Didn't use his jab, but this guy's never gonna be in a bad fight with his style and his offensive arsenal and his willingness to fight and to fight anybody. What's there not to like? Will he become one of the elites of the elite? That remains to be seen. We'll see. He may or he may not. It's up in the air. He may. But for now, for him, he delivered on his first pay-per-view. That fight was fucking electric in the MGM last night. I've been to bigger fights in terms of how they're going to perform on pay-per-view numbers-wise, but that was one of the best atmospheres I've been to. They put on a show, Benavidez and Plant, and Benavidez is a fan-friendly fighter. He's a fighter who, when you put him up against marquee opponents on pay-per-view, it's not going to be boring. His style doesn't allow for a boring fight. So what's there? I like David Benavidez. And of course people like Caleb Plant. He's been getting over with people well. So it was a fun night, man. I've been covering these guys for over half a decade. I covered them going back and forth, and I'm happy they put on. I'm happy they delivered and actually exceeded expectations, and both walked out of the fight with their heads held high. And so that's what boxing was all about last night. And the whole card was good. Cody Crowley was a warrior against Abel Ramos. Face was disfigured after the fight, but he got a hard fought victory. Did Cody Crowley? He's not gonna threaten someone like Jaron Boots Ennis, but he is a tough customer and gave us a hell of an opening bout. And then Chris Colbert and Rayo Valenzuela was the undercard bout of the night. And a lot of people felt Rayo Valenzuela got jobbed. I do feel, you hurt the guy a half dozen times and you drop him, you should win the fight. But you guys know that's not how fights are scored. If I hurt you a half dozen times over the course of 4 rounds and drop you, But in 6 other rounds out of 10, you touch me up and do just enough to get those 6 rounds, you're going to win the fight by a point, even though it feels like I should have won because I hurt you so many times and yada yada. That fight, to me, came down to how did you score the 10th round? Because Colbert won the entirety of the 10th, and then Rayo hurt him in the last 10 seconds, hit him with a left hand, where that shook him up a little bit, and then pounded him on the ropes. I'm okay. I understand if you felt that was enough to steal the round, and I understand if you felt Colbert, by winning the first 2 minutes and 45 seconds of it, won that round. And depending on how you scored that 10th round, I thought may have decided the fight. But that's an unpopular opinion from ringside. Everyone ringside in the media felt Valenzuela got jobbed. And then in the co-main event, my man Joey Spencer, shout out to you, Joey, for the huge heart you showed. You still showed explosiveness, but it looked like it was a junior middleweight against a super middleweight. And Jesus Ramos was tremendous with his punch selection. Not the fastest guy, but he has timing. And great timing, great punch selection, and big kid, composed, good IQ, boxing IQ kid. Gonna struggle a little bit in the speed department, but he will make up for it with timing, length, power, good power, and heavy hands. Jesus Ramos, easily one of the top up-and-comers at 154, alongside a Xander Zayas over on the top rank side, and Israel Madrimov is good over there in Matchroom too. But Jesus Ramos, great job, and a shout out to my man Joey for the grit he showed. He still has a future in this sport. It'd just be nice to fight a guy his own size and to get some more experience in, but Ramos did his thing. Man, we got over 800 people in. Joey looked slow. Joey didn't look slow to me. He looked explosive and had snap on his shots. He just looked small. He looked like he was 2 weight classes below Jesus Ramos. It looked like a big brother and a little brother fighting, but Joey too small for 54, says Tyree Howard. Well, he's a tweener. He's a muscular bound kid, so he can't squeeze down to 147. It's 54 for him. He's just got to be match made well and be more often. You know, he was fighting twice a year as if it was already at the championship level. He was at the prospect level. We should have been fighting 4 or 5 times a year. He's got to get more active and just continue to develop. And his dad did a great stoppage because Joey was tough and was going to keep taking a beating. And his dad, stopped it. Didn't stop it in 9, 10, 11. He stopped it in 7, which was preserved his son. So they're great people, the Spencer camp. You guys can't tell. I do got a personal affinity for them. So Mix 616 says Caleb Plant should walk away, but he has a job as a gatekeeper now. Well, for Plant, it all depends on how much did Benavidez take out of him last night. If Plant can still be the same fighter he was last night, I think he has a good chance of still beating Jamal Charlo at 168, moving up, or Boo Boo Andrade. He's been at the weight longer than those guys. He's actually still younger than those guys, but he's taken a lot more punishment now than those guys. Plant is still a guy that could beat. He'd be a gatekeeper against Morrell. He could still give Morrell problems, but that would be a gatekeeper type situation if they put him in with Morrell. Against Boo Boo or Charlo, very winnable fights for Caleb Plant. So it all depends how much more Caleb wants to get out of this in boxing. He's already made a lot of money and became, the only world champion from his home state and hometown of Ashland in Tennessee. He's got his girl, he's got his woman Jordan Plant, who he loves, and they're a beautiful couple. And how much more does he want to fight in this brutal business? But if he can still be the same fighter he was last night, he's still going to be tough for any 168-pounder and can beat some of them for sure. Let's see. I got a super chat. Demetrius versus Jamal. His girdle belt is trash. Demetrius versus Jamal. I got Maul in that fight, but then again, Matt Korobov out of that southpaw stance was piecing him up with the straight left hand all night long, and Maul has been so inactive. But Andrade fades down the stretch, and Jamal has power. Has real power in the right hand. I think, Charlo got to get a fight in at this point. Maybe Adonis at 160, but Charlo can't jump into Benavidez or someone like that right now. He needs to fight at 160. I think he should for Charlo, have a swan song at 60 with Adonis. I know Adonis is dangerous, but he was a 154-pounder. And I know Charlo was too, but he's huge. But, I think Charlo could still get right and beat an Adonis at 60. And then it's time to go up to 68, maybe have an adjustment fight at 68, get acclimated to the weight, and then, or fight Adames and then fight Andrade at 68. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Andrade. Do they? I don't know. I'm not sure how PBC is going to move Andrade and Charlo as it pertains to Benavidez. Do they face them off with each other? Do they look to feed both of them to Benavidez to build them up for a Canelo pay-per-view? It remains to be seen, but I know I favor Benavidez over anybody at 68, not named Canelo, and that's a 50-50 type fight to me, where out of respect for who Alvarez is and his skills, I would, give him the nod as the favorite. But yeah, so... And Morrell would be a tough fight for Benavidez. It's just Morrell is green, but Morrell is the next boogeyman of the division. If David fights Canelo and moves up to 75, Morrell will be the new boogeyman and take his place there. So, Nige Bean says, don't nobody want to fight Boo Boo for real. That's true. I mean, he was ducked, and Boo Boo was ducked at 54 and at 60. Ducked by Golovkin and Munguia at 60. Screwed up some fights. I can't say he was ducked by the Charlos at 54 because he tried to leave the contract and all that. So big fights got away from him at 54, and he was ducked at 60. Billy Joe testing positive, and their fight went off. So Boo Boo's had to deal with some ducking, but in his mid-30s now, in his third weight class where his legs aren't as swift as they used to be, I just think Boo Boo's best days are a little bit behind him. Still formidable, still good, obviously, but I think he gets stopped by Benavidez. He don't got enough to keep Benavidez off of him. He could do like Plant. He could do good for like 4 or 5 rounds, and then it's a wrap. So, and he doesn't have feet like Plant anymore. Jeremiah says, "What's up, Jeremiah? Good to see you in the chat. What's next for Caleb Plant? Vacation and rest, man. Vacation and rest. And if I'm Plant, I think I could. I like my chances against Charlo at 68 or Andrade, and maybe he needs a tune-up like he did with Durrell after Canelo, or maybe he could jump right back in there. But I think for Plant, assess your body, listen to your body, enjoy your family and your hard and the fruits of your labor, and then decide, because Plant would never settle for being a journeyman or a gatekeeper. He wants to fight in big fights, and I think if he were to fight in one more big fight and lose, like against a Charlo or something, I think he'd call it a day, because he wouldn't just stick around and become a stepping stone for guys. So I expect Plant to have another run at a big fight. I think he will be in another big fight before his career is over. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Charlo or Andrade. So we'll see. Jesus M says Plant should retire. Well, he should assess things. He's not going to retire. Not at 30 years old. Not coming off a fight where he was that good early. I know fighters. He's not going to retire. I mean, then again, you never know. But I don't think he's going to retire. So, Reza Jamishi, my bad, brother, on the pronunciation, say, Sean, you're the best at the game. Respect. Thank you, brother. Christian Munoz, what about Ryan and Tank? Hold on, I think I had a super chat I missed here. Prada Pierre said Boo Boo should be given a chance at Benavidez. I mean, be careful what you wish for in that scenario. I think Boo Boo would rather fight Charlo. That fight makes more sense. They both began as 54 pounders. They're both the same size. There's already history and bad blood there. There's no history or bad blood with David Benavidez. That's their Benavidez Plant, Charlo and Andrade. And actually, both of those guys, Charlo and Andrade, they need a shot in the arm. They need a shot in their arm, and beating the other would do that for them, and then would make a Benavidez or a Canelo fight, actually enticing. But I like that fight, Charlo and Andrade. They're both 2 undefeated top American fighters whose careers are in limbo, and both need a shot in the arm. I like Charlo Andrade. I want to see that fight by the end of the year. Charlo can take a tune-up at 60 or something, or if Charlo could do that, but why not, man? We're in March. It's going to be April soon. Andrade has nothing scheduled. We know they're not going to fight each other square on next. Charlo's going to face someone over the summer, he told us during fight week. But, yeah, him and Andrade, they need to mix it up for all the reasons I said. Let's see here. Kenny Bayless is a terrible referee, very biased. He was last night. Wasn't his best hour. Just looking at some in the chat, man. Jeremiah, will we get an AJ round by round? Absolutely. You know it, brother. Anthony Joshua, Jeremiah, Franklin. I gotta look up Franklin. I gotta be honest. I gotta look up Franklin. I gotta watch tape on him, and then I can give you guys some thoughts on that. Joshua with Derek James is probably a deadly fit. And actually, interestingly enough, I was on the record after Joshua lost to Usyk. I can't remember if it was the first or the second fight, but I think it was the second fight. I said, watch out for Joshua, because he didn't like the pressure. He did not like the pressure of being the heavyweight champion of the world, right? So now that the belts are off of him, and he could kind of just go to the gym and train, and he could kind of just have a fight, and it's not all the pressure and the hoopla surrounding him, I think that might be good for Joshua, and I think we could see a more dangerous Anthony Joshua with some of that pressure off his chest and yet a chip on his shoulder, and kind of being left alone from the spotlight for the first time since before the Klitschko fight, and just can go to a little dingy gym in Texas and train with Derek James, who he probably should have got with in the first place, is even though Robert Garcia did well with Joshua in the Usyk rematch, got him to bend his knees more than ever and improved his performance a little bit. But I'm expecting Joshua, just how he's been looking in camp with James, and just knowing the trainer James is, and the way that Joshua will probably look good and a little more relaxed in his first fight under Derek James. So I'll definitely be calling a round by round for that. War Prime Minister said, people want to blame the rep, but where was all that monster talk? 5'7" man did what the monster couldn't do. And, for that, Canelo deserves credit. That's why he's Canelo Alvarez. But I would say to you, my friend, Canelo, by the time he fought Plant, peaked, finished product. 26-year-old Canelo was not a finished product. Around that time, who was Canelo fighting around that time? Chavez Jr. and fought Amir Khan around that time. Okay, Amir Khan, right? Amir Khan, when Canelo was around the age Benavidez was at last night, was boxing Canelo's ears off in the first 4 or 5 rounds until he got destroyed and knocked out by one right hand. That's kind of what happened with Plant. It didn't knock him out with one right hand like that, but it's like, okay, you're up 4 rounds to nothing, moving and grooving, sticking and moving, but you're gonna slow down, and I'm gonna batter you once you do. So look how much better Canelo Alvarez got from the Amir Khan fight to the Caleb Plant fight, dealing with that kind of style. I mean, Amir Khan was a welterweight. Caleb Plant was a super middleweight with equal foot speed. No one had hand speed like Khan, but equal foot speed and a much better jab than Amir Khan. And yet Canelo struggled a lot less in the early rounds against Plant than he did against Khan. And Plant's a much, much superior fighter. Why is that? Because Canelo in those prime years, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, going into 30, got better and better and better. Benavidez will in all likelihood get better and better. I'll say it now, he's going to be a better fighter from this fight. Yeah, there's that. There is that. But that said, like you said, the little 5'8", the other little Mexican monster from Guadalajara, he got the knockout and Benavidez did not. And overall, he had a more stellar performance than Benavidez against Plant, a more complete performance. But Benavidez inflicted more damage and more punishment in total against Plant than Benavidez did. That fight's amazing. I can't say it enough. That fight's been amazing. Let me see. I got a super chat to get to. Boo Boo and Caleb Plant always get too complacent. No second gear. Well, yeah. I mean, Plant at times, at least Plant, like in the Uzcategui fight in the 8th round, got a second knockdown off the left hook. Plant had to dig in and show some grit down the stretch against Benavidez. He did try to stand in there a couple times to get that left hook off when David was battering him. But I appreciate your comment, Boxing Fan X4. You do bring up a fair point. They don't have a second gear. They're not like David, who's better in the second half of the fights than he is the first half. Lomachenko better in the second half. Crawford, Spence better in the second half of fights than they are in the first half. And that's not Boo Boo and Plant. You are correct. Let's see here. 3 good fights this month. Yep. Oh, Chris Mills, good to see you. Andrew Castellanos, thank you for the super chat, my man. In your opinion, did Canelo ever avoid Charlo or Boo Boo? He certainly didn't avoid Charlo. It was even said by Jermell, his own brother, although, they were beefing at the time. He could have just been talking shit. But, it was confirmed by De La Hoya and Jermell Charlo that an offer was made for Charlo to come to DAZN and fight Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, his business dealings with PBC is going to complicate that for Charlo, but he definitely didn't duck Charlo. Andrade, I know the argument is, why'd you want to be undisputed at 68? By the way, he only mentioned the word undisputed at 68 once Benavidez got stripped of that WBC. But why did you want to? Why not be undisputed at 160? Why didn't you do the Andrade fight? Because he just didn't want to. And if you want to call that a duck, have your opinion, but you got to do something like David did last night to Plant to make it happen for yourself. And that was never that opportunity was never afforded to Andrade because Hearn wouldn't help make the Golovkin fight. Golden Boy, no matter how long Munguia was the mandatory, refused to put him in there with Andrade. But it's not like at this point, if Canelo were to campaign at 168 pounds after Ryder and not face Benavidez, that's a duck. But Canelo is like, I just beat Jacobs, I just beat Golovkin, I am the middleweight champion. I may not be undisputed, but there is no dispute who the middleweight champion is. I got the ring, I got the WBC, the WBA, the IBF. Golovkin and Jacobs were considered the top two guys in the division. I beat them. I'm good. Next, I'm out. I'm out to get these bigger weight class belts. It's not like Andrade's done something that's going to make or break my legacy at 160. My legacy is sealed at 160. I'm going to keep it pushing. So if you're an Andrade fan, I get it. You're going to slant it all in Andrade's direction. But, it's not like Andrade, showed out in crazy performances and blew guys away, although that's not his style necessarily. But, it is what it is. It's not a legacy-defining fight for Canelo Alvarez the way Benavidez is now at 68. So that's how it is on my side for that. Someone said, "Shut up." Andrade avoided Parker. LOL. Yeah, I mean, it is funny that Andrade, talks so much about being ducked, and then the minute one of his mandatories is actually a formidable threat, Janibek, who I think Andrade would beat, but at least it's a formidable threat. It ain't these other mandatories you've been fighting, and then he vacates. So it's like, that don't make you look like the boogeyman. Antonio Margarito, when he really was the boogeyman at welterweight, he fought the other boogeyman that no one else wanted to fight. He fought Paul Williams, and vice versa. Paul Williams, when he really was the boogeyman, he fought the other boogeyman. But can Canelo even make 160 anymore? No. We're talking about 2018 and taking it back. 160 has been so done for Canelo. Thank you for the super chat, Ace Plays. And Canelo surprised me I thought when he left 160 it was going to be a mistake. I'm like, you're 5'8", middleweight has got to be your peak weight class. And then I was wrong. 168 became it. Diet, nutrition is amazing. The way you can move up in weight classes and have such power. But Bull. Thank you for the super chat. Did last night encourage more future top matchups? I think it did. I think the crowd was a big gate. They did over $3 million at the gate. I think the pay-per-view will do about 150,000 buys, which brings in a little over $10 or $11 million in revenue. So all in all, they probably made about $15 million in revenue last night and sponsorships and everything. And I do think so because it was a big fight that lived up to or exceeded expectations. And so when you get a big fight that doesn't, it's like, maybe we overhype these big fights and it makes the fighters more cynical about them. But no, I do think last night will encourage more top matchups. I think whenever two guys put it all on the line and give a great fight in a fight people were expecting, it's just always good for boxing and reminds us of why we're fight degenerates, as Larry Merchant used to say. But Asset Exposition said Callum Smith deserved his fight with Canelo. Well, Callum beat some guys like George Groves, had his little tournament where he won the WBA belt, and John says, we learned that David Benavidez can't cut off the ring. No, he couldn't. And I thought his length and his jab could negate some of that. It's like, well, I'm so long and I have such a good jab that I don't need to be as good at cutting off the ring as like a Tim Tszyu. But man, that jab didn't show up last night, and I was disappointed about that by Benavidez because I just feel like if he could have made more use of his jab from the outset and wasn't trying to reach with power shots early on, that fight could have been a little easier on himself. But I'm curious if he learned from that. Getting his boxing IQ tested and improved by facing a guy like Caleb Plant. So, you might be right about Benavidez losing to Bivol. Definitely a hard fight. I mean, I think Benavidez is 50-50 with Canelo, Bivol, and Beterbiev. Those are 50-50 type fights for me. Benavidez has the size, speed, power, and arsenal to compete or beat any fighter from 168 and 175 pounds. Conversely, he has the flaws in his game to be beaten by those guys from 168 to 175. He's exciting for that reason. He's good enough and has enough of an arsenal and enough talent and big enough to beat any man from those on any given night from 68 to 75, but he's flawed enough with the crossing the feet, not cutting the ring off, sometimes standing straight up, not using the best of his arsenal to his IQ. So that's exciting to me. He's could beat or could lose to the best fighters in the world from 68 to 75, and he'll be fun doing it. If he loses, it's going to be fun to watch because he's going to be standing in front of the guy all night losing. If he wins, it's going to be fun to watch. He's going to be standing in front of the guy all night pounding on him to win. So I really enjoy watching David Benavidez fights. So let's see here. Plant couldn't land counter shots on David like he did with Canelo. I disagree, E. Jackson. I think Plant touched up Benavidez more than he touched up Canelo and gave him more fits. But he also took more punishment over the course of the fight than he did from Canelo as well. Let me say, Jonathan, you mean he could possibly KO anyone but not win a clean fight with... Let me see. But not win a clean fight against Bivol or even Canelo? No, he could. He could. I don't think you saw the best of his skills last night. I think you saw a guy first time on that stage against a slick guy with great feet who had been on that stage before with a great game plan and a great coach. And I think you saw David learn on the job a little bit, and he began to counter the counterpuncher. I thought that was an impressive adjustment by Benavidez, where he started to hold his ground and catch and shoot, and let Plant jump in with lead lefts and lead left hooks, and then he'd catch and counter him back. So that fight, it was a hell of a fight. Pulse XDEX saying, brawling will only get you so far. IQ always wins. You got a good point. But I think Benavidez's IQ is going to get better from last night, and he has the tools in his belt that if the IQ gets better, he can put some things together and make fights like last night easier on himself. But we'll see. We'll see. Not having that high IQ is a skill. Not everybody does get better. Not everybody. Some guys just are what they are, and maybe that will be Benavidez. But I have a hunch because of his ability to do a number of different things in there, like starting to catch and shoot and countering Caleb down the stretch, that he's going to improve from this fight. Andrew Castellanos said, I still have questions about Benavidez's chin. I feel better about his chin now than I did last night. Plant isn't the kind of puncher, Andrew, where it's like, okay, it's solved. Benavidez has a granite chin now. But I do think Plant carried the kind of pop in his left hook and he actually at one point landed the exact same combination on David in the fourth round that he landed on Darrell. The left hook to the body and then the left hook up top, the double left hook. And David walked right through it. So I think he showed that he's not chinny. Now, the question remains, would his chin hold up getting hit by those same kind of punches by Canelo or Bivol or Beterbiev? I think it'd be a much bigger problem because those are the kind of punchers that even if you have a good chin, they can hurt you. So, it remains to be seen how his chin holds up against guys with real power. But I do think we found out, Andrew, that he's not chinny. That the Graville knockdown and all that, that he's not chinny. He's not chinny. So, But the jury's still out on, is it a granite chin, something like that. It'll have to be tested by a puncher. That's the only way to find out. Caleb is the ultimate great white hope, says Joey Chaz. No, he is not. Jerry Cooney was. No, but Yeah, I don't really think they marketed Caleb as the great white hope. They kind of marketed him for who he was, like a fly white guy who came from the bottom. Genuinely, it's not a front. He really is from there. He's not a wigger. That's just kind of, I think, the element he grew up around, and that's him being real. To me, a wigger is someone putting on. I think, like Caleb Plant is an authentically fly guy. Who's got the swag he's got. And he came into the ring with a lot of swag last night. He was a lot more comfortable at that level than he was against Canelo, and it showed early on. So, I don't think he was ever marketed that way. But that's just me. Please, Sean, do you think that Canelo versus Benavidez will look like Canelo versus GGG 1 or 2? No, Bivol has a more similar style to Golovkin than Benavidez. I think, my fingers crossed is that we get something, with a slower pace because they're bigger guys. But I'm hoping we get something like Morales Barrera, but at super middleweight with Benavidez kind of although Benavidez don't have Morales' feet, but Benavidez kind of being like Morales, the temperamental, angry, volume guy throwing with volume, and then Canelo being Barrera, the short, stockier guy with the great hook to the body, getting underneath the tall guy and killing his ribs and riling him up, making him angry, making him throw a bunch of and so that'd be great. Let's see. Still got 800 people here. That's amazing. Benavidez versus Morel, Alexi Barons. Benavidez right now. But Morel's the only guy that equals the physicality of Benavidez. He's a big guy too, and his feet are better than David Benavidez. His feet are better than David's, but still he's developing. Benavidez would win that fight right now, in my opinion. So that fight, I don't like that fight for either guy right now. If you're David, it's like, nah, man, I've earned my way to this level finally, and I want big fights against veterans with big names. I don't want to fight this young killer that's young and unproven, so if I beat him, I get no credit, but he's so talented, he might beat me. And then if you're David Morel, and it's like, why I got to fight David Benavidez with less than 10 fights, So that's how I see that. Let's see. Do I think David gets the stoppage last night with competent refereeing? I do think so. Yeah, I do. But I don't want to turn it into a bunch of excuses for David. Canelo got the stoppage and he didn't, And if David had a higher ring IQ like Canelo did, again, Canelo vastly more experienced by the time he fought Plant in his peak of his prime. Benavidez ain't there yet, so let's keep that in mind. But if Benavidez had a higher IQ like Canelo, made better use of his weapons, namely the jab from the outset, he might have got a stoppage even with Kenny Bayless doing all that he did. So, is that a Sega Dreamcast in the back? Indeed it is. Indeed it is. And that is even... Let me see. We got... Indeed it is. Little NFL Blitz. Who remembers this, y'all? Little NFL Blitz 2000. And then for my fighting game heads, little that Capcom vs. SNK 2. So... Definitely got the Dreamcast in the back. Sometimes I end these streams playing Undisputed, but nah, I'm good. We're just going to talk boxing today. David will get stopped by Canelo. Very possible. Very possible. But a great fight. We got to see it. As long as David can handle his business against good opponents while Canelo attempts to get redemption against Bivol. And I think that fight... I think even if Canelo loses to Bivol, but it's a much more competitive fight and not as dull of a fight. That first fight was dull. Then he'll be all right. We'll still have a lot of shine on Canelo versus Benavidez. But if Canelo somehow beats Bivol, which I love Canelo, I love the great fighter that he is, but I can't quite see him doing that. I do think he's gonna do like he did in the Golovkin rematch and come back a better fighter. Problem is, I think Bivol's gonna be better. I think Bivol's a little more loosened, a little more confident now, having beaten him the first time. He believes in himself that much more. So I actually think part 2 between Bivol and Canelo is going to be dope because I think both guys are going to be better. And that first fight was dull. I think the second fight's going to be a lot better. And as long as Canelo can be super competitive, even if he loses, then that doesn't really take any shine off Undisputed at 168. So let me see. I got a question here that I wanted to get to. What was it? What was it? I saw someone bring up a video game I loved, and now I lost it. That's all right. Whatever. Dane Sampson. Good to see my man Dane Sampson. Talk about the Ray robbery, the Rayo. Yeah, I mean, again, here was the thing. I thought Rayo won the fight. I mean, he hurt Colbert a half dozen times and dropped him. But if you hurt a guy a half dozen times and it's bunched up over any given 4 rounds, and the other guy, he squeaks out 6 of those 10 rounds, and even with the knockdown, he still wins by a point. And that's what Colbert was able to do on the judges' card. And shout out to Colbert for getting dropped and not going out like he did against Hector Garcia. He got up from that knockdown and took the fight to Rayo a lot of time. Back Rayo up at times in the center of the ring. Colbert just had no pop at 135, but he had, that blazing hand speed showed up in the center of the ring, and depending on how you scored that 10th round, in my opinion, decided on if Colbert edged it out or not, because the 10th round, Colbert won the whole round for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Then he got hit with a left hand by Rayo, got buzzed, and then had to cover up on the ropes and eat a barrage of shots. So I understand if you felt Rayo took that round because of that last 15 seconds, but I also understand the judge's logic if they gave it to Colbert because he won the first 245. And depending on how you scored that 10th round, I actually thought the fight was kind of on the table. That wasn't in a popular opinion ringside. Everyone else ringside thought it was an awful robbery. Some people that really know boxing felt that way, but I was scoring the fight live with a lot of you guys in the chat last night, and going into the last round, I had it even, and then I couldn't make up my mind on if I wanted to give Rayo the round because he stunned him a little bit with a left hand in the last 10 seconds, or if I wanted to give it to Chris. So, to me, when you really go by how scoring works round to round, it wasn't a robbery, but as a fight as a whole, Rayo won the fight. He hurt him a half dozen times and dropped him, so it feels like Rayo definitely deserved the decision. They should run it back, but Chris Colbert said, fuck all that, and I'm going back to my own weight division now. So, let's see. Sean, where does Edgar Berlanga fit in between all these 168 guys? He'd be in over his head right now, fighting the tops of the division. If you're struggling with Steve Rolls, you're dead meat against the top of the division. Berlanga needs to forget about the top of the division right now. He needs to just get back to developing, because he reminds me right now a little bit of a pitcher who had a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and then he started losing his mechanics, and they got to send him back down to AA and AAA because it's like he forgot how to pitch a little bit, just so the mechanics start getting off. And I'm not a baseball expert, but I believe that's how it works, is sometimes in the throwing motion, or then they send him down to the minors and send him back to scratch, and that's kind of what Berlanga needs right now. Do you think that Plant can win in a rematch? No, I don't think so. I think his best shot at winning was last night. I think if he were to run into Benavidez again, I don't know if he'd be the same fighter after the punishment he took last night, and I think Benavidez would be better this time around. So, and he's got one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in Coach Larry Wade. If Coach Wade couldn't get you to fade, it's just something in your cardiovascular system or whatever. It's just how you're built. But Berlanga is heavy-handed. Marvelous Irv, good to see you, brother. Yeah, Berlanga is heavy-handed, and I don't count him out just yet, but he needs to play AA and AAA ball right now. Forget about the guys at the top of the majors. Just get back to square one. So yeah, starting to get down to below 700 now. Starting to run out of steam a little bit, but let me get through a few more questions from the chat. Sean, Tufan Anaz, good to see you. What do you think about Charlo Zhu? Still got to favor Charlo. He's the more versatile fighter. Can lead, can counter, faster, knockout artist at times, and way more experienced. One of the best fighters pound for pound in the world, and one of the all-time greats at 154. So you got to favor Charlo, but coming in off more than a year layoff by the time they fight, and a hand injury, and allowing Tim Tszyu to get that experience against Tony Harrison, it jumped Tim Tszyu's chances from like 10% to like 30-ish percent, 30 to 35%. So Tim Tszyu is a real live dog against Jermell Charlo. And if Jermell Charlo shows up the way he does sometimes in fights, like he did for the first fight with Harrison and the first fight with Castaño, it's going to get away from him. And he'll find himself in his third rematch because he'll need to do what he did against those two guys, which is turn it up the second time around. That might have to be the case again with Tszyu. Maybe he needs 12 rounds to figure Tszyu out, and Tszyu takes the titles off of him, and then Charlo has to get him back in a rematch. Charlo better make sure he's got that rematch clause in place. But I do favor him. I got a couple super chats to get to. Midwest Boxing said someone had a Charlo bit. He seems off still. Yeah, I talked to him after the fight. It was good to catch up with Jamal. He was very cool to me, but did still seem a little bit off. It seemed like I've been drinking a little something. But Jamal, when he's right, like he was against J-Rock and like he was against Derevianchenko in the pandemic, he brings a lot to the table. The power jab, the right hand that has power in it. He can counter. He's an athlete. He's explosive. He's strong. He's big. So Charlo, when he's right, is still a top fighter. And him and Benavidez would be a fucking awesome fight if he could get himself back together and comfortably get up to 168 pounds. But for now, momentum is shot right now for Charlo. So that's why I'd like to see him and Andrade fight. Larry Walker, thank you for the $5 super chat, brother. Getting back to Anthony Joshua. Joshua just needs to learn how to box everybody that needs to learn how to box. Everybody that beat Joshua knew how to box. A good boxer can beat almost everybody. Larry Walker, though, learning the sweet science is the hardest part about, it's hard. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and it's hard to teach this muscle-bound guy, and that's part of his gift. It's his power, his punching power. He's a knockout artist, Anthony Joshua is. In the era of Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua's power has gone a little underrated. He's a hell of a puncher, especially with his left hook and his right uppercut. But he can never really tee off and get Usyk clean with that left hook and uppercut up top. But it's hard to teach this muscle-bound guy to be smooth and fluid and to be slick. I think Joshua should have developed his aggressiveness with more skills. Skills, we were talking about this all week, Benavidez and Plant. Skills come in a variety of packages. It doesn't always have to be the counterpuncher off the back foot. You can improve your skill as a pressure fighter, as a knockout artist, as a come forward fighter, and I think that's kind of what Joshua needs, and that's what he's about to get from Derek James, because that's how Derek James has Errol Spence schooled on the front foot. So I think Derek James is going to do good for Joshua. I think Joshua still has a run left in him. If this is right, and if this is right, he's still a handful for any heavyweight. Like him and Joe Joyce. I know a lot of people feel like Joyce would just break Joshua down, but if Joshua could hold his composure and his poise and walk Joyce into those left hooks up top and those right uppercuts, he might be able to knock someone like Joe Joyce out. But he'll need to be mentally stronger going forward. We'll see if Derek James can do that for him. Let's see. So yeah, I'm running out of steams here. Someone said the Charlos aren't trash. You goofy. No way. The Charlos ain't trash at all. Jamal, when he's right, is a hell of a fighter, and Jamel's one of the ATGs at 154. So, Accurate the shit said, why were you all with Plant? Bad bias news. Guys, get it, Accurate. Tell him how I was really being a Benavidez fanboy all week. Get it, this guy, Accurate the shit. Get it at him. Set him right, Chad. Tell him, bro, where have you been all week? Sean was sounding like a fucking Benavidez meat rider all week. What are you talking about? So, Jesus Beltran says, do you think David fights Canelo next, or will he busy with Dimitri and current fight? Do you think David will fight? Yeah, I just hope that David gets significant fights in the meantime. Andrade, Charlo, the Morrell fight I explained earlier. If I beat this kid, he hasn't done anything yet, so you're not going to give me any credit, but he's so talented at 68 that he might beat me. So what an awful risk-reward proposition. Then if you're Morrell, why the fuck do I got to fight this monster after 7 or 8 fights? That's ridiculous. So I hope Benavidez can get Charlo or Andrade in the ring, but at the same time, they should fight each other. That makes more sense before either one of them gets in there with the Mexican monster. So let's see. Pause, Wilson. Yeah, pause. Yeah, pause. You're right. Pause. I should have threw a pause in there. So, Bully Block Boxing, do you honestly think Canelo will fight Benavidez? I think if David continues to do his job and doesn't just win, but wins, in exciting fashion. He didn't get the knockout, but it was exciting last night. That, David will fight, or Canelo will fight him, because I believe Canelo's a true champion. And I believe the people in Mexico will begin to put pressure on him. And, I think if David just continues to perform really well, he can't just win, he's got to show out, then he'll get that fight. He might get it next year. Canelo, after Bivol, might, because after that, he's contractually done with Matchroom, and he's once again opened up to negotiate as a free agent. Don't be surprised if Canelo turns around after Bivol and fights Benavidez. Don't be surprised, Don't be surprised if they fight Cinco de Mayo here in Vegas next year. Not out of the question. So, Ed Marr, and I'll start closing here in a minute. I'll get out of here in a minute. You guys were awesome for rocking with me on the Z-Cap. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hit the like button if you're still in here. Makes it look good for us. But who do I want Wilder to fight next? I got a chance to catch up with Deontay last night after the fight, and couldn't get anything out of him really though. Couldn't get any information in terms of who would be next or not. I do know, speaking to people this week, some of the people around PBC, that they are definitely willing to do the Usyk fight. They do love that fight for Wilder. They do want to make that fight for Wilder. It's just a question of, can it be done with all of Usyk's mandatories and all the, Dubois is a mandatory and all that. The way these sanctioning bodies work, the way I size it up, is if, Wilder's team can push that fight through the goal line and then present it to the sanctioning bodies. Look, we've all agreed to terms. You sure you don't want this 3% of Usyk Wilder? You sure you want 3% of Usyk Dubois instead? Or if Usyk says, fuck it, then strip me, I'm fighting Deontay. You sure you want Dubois against whoever you got rated number 1? No, they're not. The sanctioning body's gonna take 3% of whatever is the most money they can make. So, if behind the scenes after Fury Usyk fell apart, if Wilder's team can put together a Usyk fight and then present it to the 3 sanctioning bodies, I think they go, yeah, this 3% works for us. But wishful thinking. But all right, guys, I want to give a shout out to everyone. The man, Horst Delgado, Edwin Alua, good to see you, brother. Joey Chaz, my man Wilson, my man Marvelous Irv, GDDD, great to see you in the chat, man. Shout out to Ray Diaz, Mr. De La Cruz, Bully Block Boxing, my man is always holding it down for us. Prada Pierre, Dane Sampson, much love to my man Dane Sampson. Who else we got? Monica Herrera, good to see you. Nice to have you for the first time, Monica. First time me seeing that name in here. Brig Johnson, American Gypsy, Adrian D. Man, who else? Ed Marr, Jamie Aros, David Heaton, Jeremiah, always Jeremiah. Thank you, brother. Bull, thank you so much throughout the chat. The man, California Bear, Grim Reaper, good to see Grim Reaper. Man, who else? I want to finish some of these shout-outs before we get out of here. You guys are awesome. Pulse X, Dex, much love to you, brother, for always being in the chat. Jesus Beltran, thank you, brother. You were great throughout. And yeah, man, and all the regulars, that come through, love you guys. Thanks for always rocking with me. James, thank you for that. Shout out to Ryan Sangalia, holding it down always. Wilson, thank you, brother, for the super chat, for the 2. I appreciate that. And then that's it, man. I'm out of here. You guys are always awesome. You guys make it so much fun. I had a blast covering this fight. This is why I love boxing. I'm going to see Canelo Wednesday in San Diego. Last question to you, chat. How do you think Canelo's going to receive me? You guys know I was the guy who asked the Benavidez question after the Golovkin fight that got him kind of mad, right? I said, Canelo, you said you wouldn't really want to fight, you don't want to fight other Mexicans, but it turns out Benavidez is actually born in America. His mom is Ecuadorian. He's half Ecuadorian. We got some wiggle room here. Maybe, what about that fight, Canelo and Benavidez? Can that happen after all? And then Canelo was like, what the fuck are you on, kid? I'll fight anybody. You know what? This press conference is over. So I'm curious how Canelo receives your boy Wednesday in San Diego. I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's one of the guys I got on the wall. So I look forward to seeing Canelo. You might see FightHype reporter gets checked go viral on all these channels if he goes off on me. So be prepared for your boy to get shitted on by Canelo just in case. But I don't think Canelo's going to be that way. Part of why I asked Canelo that question is because he's a grown-ass man who can take that question. He can take the heat because he's a professional. He's a grown-ass man and old school type man that I got a lot of respect for. So I don't think Canelo's going to be like that when I see him. I look forward to it. So everyone have a great rest of the weekend. Keep it locked in. We'll be covering throughout. I'll be back for the Joshua round by round. I'll be live if we get good Wi-Fi in Canelo's gym Wednesday in San Diego. We'll see how he's looking for John Ryder. We'll ask him what he thought of the fight, and we'll ask him about how he's preparing for the Bivol rematch. And just looking forward to. I might get punched, says Joey Chaz. I might. I mean, that's a hell of a lawsuit, but it'd be a little bit of an honor to take that left hook and get knocked out by Canelo. I don't want that to happen. I wouldn't want to sue Canelo. Pussy shit, right? But if I get punched, man, I did it to try to ask the good questions. Make sure you clinch. That ain't going to help. He's going to be like Benavidez and just elbow his way out of it and destroy me. That ain't going to help. We better just hope Canelo's a nice guy. So, no, Canelo's a classy dude. Old school type of fella. He may give me a hard time, but I think it's going to be fun. So, you guys have a great time. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. Sean Zittel from FightHype gets checked by Canelo. Red, they're not even going to give me the honor of putting my name in there. They're going to be like, stupid reporter. Canelo goes off on stupid report. They're going to kill me, these other channels. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it doesn't, I'm kind of mentally prepared. And I'm hoping you guys got my back a little bit once I get back in the chat. So everyone have a good one. And keep it locked in here on FightHype throughout.